these days, everyone is talking about travel. Though people aren't traveling as much as they would like to be, it's still a hot topic of conversation. You talk to your friends or your colleagues and ask them where it is they're thinking about traveling when they feel safe traveling again. They usually have a pretty instant answer, and that answer usually pretty has a strong emotion attached to it, something that they really look to getting back to doing, a place they'd like to experience again. No matter what your personal favorite destination is, it's really about that powerful experience that travel brings. As designers, we focus on how we can make buildings that support user experience, especially on the hospitality side. We really look at focusing on how buildings support sense of place and are really a launching pads for people's discovery when they go on vacation. Um, and as designers, we're looking for all the different tools and technologies and materials that help us bring these types of experience to the users. And one of the trends we've been following is the use of mass timber construction. Um, We've seen it a lot in office and residential buildings, but we haven't seen too much of it in the U.S. in hotels. There's a lot outside of the U.S. There's been some of the U.S., but a lot of that mass timber has actually been hidden and covered up, so you wouldn't know it's a mass timber building. There's been a recent opening in Austin, Texas, with a hotel that utilized mass timbers and exposing it in the guest rooms and the public spaces. Um, it's been found to be an effective construction type in these other asset classes. So over the last year, or maybe even longer, a group of some of the people here and some other designers and engineers have been thinking about, well, how do we bring hotel mass timber to hotel construction? Is there a fit, and what are the challenges? So what we'd like to do is share a little bit about what we learned during that process and talk a bit about where we might see things going. So we'll start off with introductions. My name is Gary Gola. I'm an architect and a principal at SERA Architects, and I focus on hospitality design. Tom?
Hi, my name is Tom Kostelecky. I'm with Marriott International, and my team helps optimize project designs for our select service brands at point of franchise application. Josh?
Hey, yeah, and I'm Josh Cabot. I'm a project architect at SERA Architects. My background spans a little bit of structural engineering with a degree, obviously, in architecture, and then some time spent in the construction industry as well. And so mass timber, for me, has been a really cool intersection of all of those. And so I've become a bit of a resource around SERA to try to help teams that are working across different markets, because we're seeing, as Gary said, mass timber happening in multifamily housing projects, in commercial workplace projects, and now increasingly in hospitality projects.
Great. Josh, maybe you can start us off, since you're the one who has sort of the most technical experience with mass timber. And just give an overview of what it is and how you're seeing it applied.
Yeah, totally. I get that question a lot from friends that are outside of the industry. Like, what do you mean by mass timber anyway? And so I brought up this slide here that shows a little bit about really how the lineage of wood has kind of advanced over centuries, right? We've been using wood as humans for millennia. And of course, we've also seen heavy timber buildings that are still built today that were built centuries ago because it's such a robust material if it's handled correctly. The differentiation with mass timber is that it's really taking smaller pieces of wood and compositing them together. And that's either using adhesives or fasteners to make bigger elements, so that you no longer have to rely on an old growth, Doug fir or something like that in order to create a large beam or a large floor system. So over the past 100 years, we've seen the advent of glue lambs, and then other elements like CLT now, this cross-laminated timber product. And so I'll jump over to another slide here in order to talk a little bit about some of those flavors. So you can see here, there's a whole variety of ways in which you can take smaller wood and put it together to make something much stronger. And the one we'll focus on maybe here for today is just that CLT, since that's the kind of the buzz term that seems to be used down in the industry a lot. CLT means cross-laminated timber. And it's actually kind of like a macro version of plywood, in the sense that you're taking 1x or 2x lumber, simple lumber that's milled, and then laying it on its sides, then applying some adhesive, and then stacking another layer of boards on top, but this time in the other direction. And that's done because wood is really strongest when it's parallel to its grain, and that is actually thinking of the tree itself. Trees are pretty darn strong, right, as they're able to reach toward the sky. because that's really the direction in which the strength is happening, and a little less so if you're to kind of push on its side. So similarly in CLT, by rotating those layers back and forth, you're actually making a much more dimensionally stable and stronger product, because it's utilizing that strength in the grain kind of in both directions. And so the cool thing about CLT is that it can be used in floor systems, it can be used as wall systems, and across all of these, with mass timber, they really enable themselves to be fabricated and with extraordinary precision now. So there's this really cool intersection between wood and technology that's something we haven't really ever seen before.
Great. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
So what this group did, the product from our conversations, is we put together a blog series that looked at bringing a theoretical mass timber hotel to market. We each took a different perspective from the developer, the operator, the architect, and the guest. And Tom, you worked on the operator perspective. Do you want to share a little bit about your thoughts and what you learned during that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Exposed wood structures are pretty uncommon today. That they do harken back to that kind of idea of a national park lodge or the Canadian railway hotels. I've worked with colleagues at Marriott who work, for example, in operations at the Yellowstone Lodge there, and she described to me in great detail about how the staff kind of lovingly oiled the wood every year, and these kind of architectural pieces like this, they're loved and appreciated and cared for, and I think as a result, the experience of that is quite strong, quite palatable. There's kind of an innate sense of comfort and relaxation that people get in there. You see people walk into the lobbies of hotels like this and their shoulders kind of relax, and they just had a hard day. They've come out of the airport or some urban location, and they're just looking for a little bit of respite and kind of getting to their room at that point. But I think it really sets a great tone for that. I'm excited, kind of personally, about the opportunities to align this technology to some of our brand platforms that are based kind of more on an eco-friendly or a wellness type component. We have projects where this could be a real differentiator and could really start to drive a kind of sales and revenue for the brands based on the kind of aesthetic that we can create in the hotel here. And I think the last thing, and it's probably the most important of all, is speed to market. So, we often say the developers write the checks until the guests check in. And so looking for new ways to get a hotel open faster, to expedite construction above the kind of conventional time frame that we see, which currently runs from about 40 to 42 months from the date that a hotel is approved to the date that the doors actually open. And then there are kind of also the labor pool limitations that are out there these days. So I think an operator is particularly interested in that speed to market, expediting, getting the hotel open and getting the guests in and enjoying their labor of love, basically.
Yeah, I would just pile on to that. I mean, yeah, Gary, I was just going to say, I totally resonate with that too, about the guest experience, and that wood is something that's so familiar, and that it's something that people can all kind of, it's probably harkening back to a connection with nature at some degree, which is really cool. I think too, it's something that can help create spaces that align with guest values too. So if guests are particularly, maybe they're interested in the place itself, like where the wood has come from, and maybe it's telling a story about that place that resonates with them or creates a memory for them. But it comes about climate and how wood is so great because it's sequestering carbon and helping us prevent, putting more carbon into the atmosphere. So it's aligning maybe to ecological values that guests might harbor. So it's kind of neat in that way. I mean, I think some stuff that I've learned through this. Of course, we've spent some time talking about, people talk about fire a lot and like, oh, shouldn't you be worried about fire in a wood building? But there's been so much research done. And of course, one of the cool things too is about oversizing wood to account for that. So large trees out in the forest under most forest fire conditions, are not burning completely up. They're charring around the outside, and that's protecting them. And so similarly, we can do that with our floors and beams and columns to protect the building. Even though it's wood, it's oversized to accommodate for that. I think acoustics is something that does come up pretty often as well. And so that's something that we're always technically trying to get our arms around, especially in a hospitality context where you've got rooms beside each other, and thinking through how that works from an assembly perspective. And there has been a lot of work done on that. Wood isn't particularly great by itself in an acoustic realm, but once you start to apply different treatments to it, or if you even utilize some of the cool CNC milling technology that's coming out to route patterns into the wood, you can actually effectively diffuse sound, so you're not sending those waves to the guest next door, for instance. So it's once again, just love seeing how technology is finding its way into this really fundamental material that we all are so familiar with.
From the hospitality design perspective, Josh, you hit on one of the things that was one of the biggest concerns for me is sound transfer. But there are things that can be done that can be mitigated. You likely can't have a hotel that has wood walls and wood ceiling and wood floors. You're going to have to treat the floor, treat the ceiling, but you can still have some wood as part of the structure be exposed within a guest room. The piece that I wrote looked at bringing a hotel to market from the developer's point of view. And so I was really wondering about the business case. And from talking to the contractor, it's not the right solution for every building. The 3-story stick frame hotel is still the least expensive way to build a 3-story hotel. But when you start to get into 7 or 8-story building, that's where the pricing starts to match some of the other types or be close. And then that idea, Tom, that you brought about speed to market and that the developer writes checks until the guest checks in, that makes a difference in the overview of the pro forma. So if you can get to market a little faster, maybe you can spend that little bit of extra percentage on the structure and still make the project pencil. So really knowing that finding that right project, it's not right for every project, but there are some projects that would be great for it. I think aesthetically, especially from the view of, say, a lodge type location, or maybe an urban location that's in a historic district that can sort of harken back to the mass timber construction, but still be very modern and sort of fit the lifestyle brands that have that very modern aesthetic, but still harken back to the historical of a district. So I think a lot of the challenges we thought about can be mitigated, but you have to do your due diligence. It's not right for every project. You got to think about it ahead of time, and there can be great fits out there for mass timber and hotels. So moving forward, what do we think we're going to see in the hospitality industry? Tom, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I think we all hope that mass timber is really going to burgeon and become kind of another means of kind of getting to an end, right, through construction. So I know that Marriott has done a lot of work on the front end with a different type of technology, which is guest room volumetric modular, where we actually build complete guest rooms in factories and deliver them to a site, raise them up by crane and drop them into place. We have about 13 of those hotels open, another 5 under construction right now. All of those also have field-built components to them. There will be foundations. There will be maybe ground floor level public space areas that need to be spanned with heavy beams for open kind of flow. So mass timber, I think, could be used certainly in conjunction with that approach that we're already using. But I think in its own right has kind of maybe fewer restrictions in that, as kind of Josh was pointing out, you can kind of build the beams and floors and wall assemblies as need be and kind of put them to their use. So it's very adaptable, I think, in that sense as well.
Josh?
Yeah, exactly. Picking up where Tom left off, exactly. If you're doing a lot more of this in a manufacturing environment, you're able to achieve higher precision. You're able to achieve actually faster assembly, and it's done under safer conditions. So there's less time spent out on a site in the weather or any other unpredictable conditions that might be happening. And so And sometimes that can actually translate to, yeah, better labor consistency and just, and in fact, sometimes better paying jobs and better, just human capital for the people that are doing this work. When we talk about prefab, I think one of the things looking forward is going to be that constant dialogue around how much is bespoke and custom and really speaks to that unique hospitality experience, and then how much is kind of under the hood and highly standardized in order to ensure that rapid assembly and kind of ensuring that there aren't a lot of surprises so that you can actually realize this value maybe over multiple buildings in the portfolio. So that's just something that every project will have to kind of navigate on its own. I think the other thing that interests me so much about this and the way it intersects with forestry is that we've seen tons of wildfires over the past few years. And in places like California, it's becoming an annual, if not seasonal occurrence that people have to contend with. And so mass timber can come in and actually provide a strategic way to help us kind of regain management of our forests by taking out some of that smaller diameter timber and being able to thin the forest in a smart way, and then using all of that to actually create products. And I think when you start to put those like assembly and fabrication facilities a little bit more out toward those rural areas, it's a chance to get timber into the supply chain a little bit fast and clean, but also it becomes a job creator for people out in those areas, and it may be a way to help us bridge a bit more of the urban-rural divide. Really fascinating.
Right. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, it's interesting to me the idea that you bring up of the sort of very bespoke properties, the one-off properties that we do, which maybe will be the first adopters. So there's that path, and then there is also the path, Tom, that you talk about is the sort of standardized hotel, the one that maybe more like a 5/1, where we do a mass timber level one and then stack modular on top of it, because that could be super efficient. So it's interesting thinking about the two paths and the different types of applications, how this product can fit with different approaches to the way we build within the industry. It's been great to talk about this. It was great to work with you guys on this process all the way for probably a year or more now that we've done this. If you're interested in learning more about what we put together in our blog series, there'll be a link to that in the article that goes along with this podcast. Thanks again, everyone, and thanks for checking out the podcast.